So I believe for less than $5,000, you can start your own farming operation.
If you tell me, yeah, you can go into this occupation, and if you can figure it out, the harder you work, the more people you get in front of, the more money you make, I can get behind something like that because there's a direct correlation between my earnings and my effort.
Honestly, the biggest thing in the ag world is carrier access, because a lot of your mainstream carriers,
You're going to always have that subset of people out there who grew up on a farm and always knew that that's where they were going to be. We're
right,
going to end up on the farm because that's what we were born to do, and our family's done it for.
plan for the next year and take a break, and I want to keep going, but I also understand the long game, and that's what ag has taught me, is everything is the long game. It's not trying to get rich quick. It's about creating a system that keeps flourishing year after year after year. The carrier access and being competitive in the ag market, that's the biggest thing, because ag risk is just different than any other line of business that we have. It's totally different.
My perspective, your value proposition is not selling them the insurance policy, it's showing them how to run their business more profitably.
My last, and so every day I'm gonna give my all to my family and to my agency, to my team, and to our farm. So
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game. Today, I've got a great agent and an even better human being probably here with Terren Moore from MFI Agency in the great state of Texas. And we're just talking about the hard market and the holidays and the recipe for disaster that you get when you combine the two of them and what it's like right now. Here we are, 3-4 weeks from the end of the year, trying to figure out how we're going to wrap up the year strong. And it seems like the rest of the world's not nearly as motivated as what we are. So before we get into all of that, let's do the obligatory podcast intro, man. Tell everybody who you are and kind of what your background is that got you into your role at MFI.
yes, sir. Well, first off, David, thanks so much for having me, man. I've read your books. I listened to your podcasts. I've seen you on multiple stages, and so it's a complete honor to be here today. My name is Terren Moore. I'm the founder and owner of MFI Agency. We started this agency from scratch in 2018, December of 2018, and so we just hit our 3-year anniversary this month, and so just happy to be in business. I started out at Texas Farm Bureau Insurance in 20, let's see, what year was that? I'm sorry, I started at Texas Farm Bureau in 2018. I started the agency December of 2021. My years
Yeah,
got
right
mixed
smack in the middle of COVID, man.
up. Right smack in the middle of COVID, man. But we made it work and we've survived. But that's where my start was. I started out captive at Farm Bureau, had a lot of fun there. I was there for about 4 years, and I actually met a guy at a brewery who owned an insurance agency, and he told me about his life, and I saw what kind of freedom he had and what kind of cars he was driving, and I said, maybe I might be missing something. And so I did a lot of research. I sat down with multiple agency owners across the state of Texas at multiple Starbucks for months and did my planning and launched MFI Agency in December of 2021.
So what led you to go to Farm Bureau, man? I mean, most people didn't grow up saying, "Hey, I can't wait till I'm old enough to go get my insurance license."
So yeah, so farm beer's been a part of my life since I was 15 years old. I'm actually a first generation farmer. So when I turned 15, I was involved with the local FFA chapter, and I did research, and I found out that Farm Bureau is a big association organization that helps other farmers with education. They also have some financial help that's offered, membership benefits. And so at the age of 15, I was a member, and I walk into these rooms full of 60-year-olds, and they're like, who's this guy? What's this young buck doing here? And I made some awesome relationships with Farm Bureau. So as I was doing my research, I was applying for jobs. I was at Tarleton State University. I was a senior in college, and I've always wanted to be an extension agent, which is basically an ag teacher over a whole county. I did the internship. They didn't pay me. So I started kind of asking, what's the compensation uh, for this position? And they told me, and I started taking some notes down, do some budgeting, and I said, okay, that leaves me with like no money at the end of the month. And I still want to run my farm. I still want to go out to eat. I want to start a family someday. And I said, I don't think for my lifestyle, this is going to cut it. I'm not a real fancy guy, anyways, but for what I want to do, it takes capital to do that. So I asked Farm Bureau, I said, I've been involved with y'all since I was 15 years old. What do you have to offer? They said, well, you can do this field rep job and you can get a salary of, I think it's 50 grand a year and you get benefits and yada, yada, yada. I said, well, I'm young, I'm single, I've got a lot of energy. I said, can I work overtime and get more money or anything? He said, no, it's a flat salary. And I said, well, I don't like the fact that I can't work harder and make more money. So I asked someone
You
on the
just
insurance
described why
side.
I got into the insurance industry, man. That's the
Yeah,
exact same thing I said. Because I mean, I was making pretty good. I was making over 100 grand a year, which at that time, 20 years ago, meant a lot more than it means right now. Actually, it probably meant twice as much back then,
right.
based on the figures I saw on a report I read yesterday. But literally, the exact I said the exact same thing because I was on a salary, and I said, what can I do that the more that I work, the harder I work, I actually make more money as opposed to right now, every hour I work above and beyond what is the requirement, I'm diminishing my hourly rate because there's no way for me to make more if I work more. That just that doesn't jive with me. And so I've never had a problem betting on myself. That's probably been to my detriment, as many times as it's actually worked out. But, you know, if you tell me, yeah, you can go into this occupation and if you can figure it out, the harder you work, the more you work, the more people you get in front of, the more money you make, I can get behind something like that because there's a direct correlation between my earnings and my effort. I don't want to go and work extra hours when what I'm doing is building the wealth or the balance sheet of another organization or another person. And that's what you run into. And I think that's the one thing I think that I think a lot of people have the wrong perspective on that. Because when you look at society and you're guilty of it and I'm guilty of it too, and you even admitted to it just in this conversation, you were in a brewery, you saw an agent, you saw what he was wearing, you saw what he was driving, and you immediately said, "Hey, I need to go do that too." That's what I want. The problem is that's not always accurate, man. There's a lot of people out there that have all of the drippings, but they don't have anything to substantiate it. And when I was in my early to mid 30s, I started reading Dr. Tom Stanley, who wrote The Millionaire Mind, The Millionaire Next Door, and several other books along building wealth. And that's when I really started to focus on the difference between having a really good salary and a high income versus having a really strong balance sheet. Because you
Right.
can make a lot of money, but if you're only income statement rich because you're throwing away everything as fast as it comes in, you're not building any kind of wealth. You're treading water and you're going to be in a really rough spot as life goes on. And I think society taints our view of this because we see so many people out there that are the outliers, right? And
Right.
Stanley even talks about this because if you think about it, man, when we're all kids, who do we want to be when we grow up? We wanted to be whoever the best football player was, or the baseball player, or the basketball player, or the movie star, or the model, or in today's age, whoever the social media influencer is. Because you got knuckleheads like Jake Paul that make more money than you could possibly imagine. And it's like I want all of that. I want. When the reality is the people who have the most wealth and the most consistent wealth over time, you never even know who they are. They
Very
blend in.
true.
They blend in, man. And I mean, that's why he titled his book The Millionaire Next Door, because there are a lot of people who probably live right by you that are worth way more money than you would ever know that they were worth because they don't walk around flaunting it with all of the things that they can afford to buy. And that's why it gets so dangerous. And I think even today when you're dealing with like influencers and all of these other things, You're taking people who probably don't know how to manage money at the level they have right now, and then you're just injecting them with all this opportunity to mismanage more money. And
Yeah.
that's who we want to follow. That's who we want to be. That's who we want to be like. It's just a completely in my opinion, it's just a completely misaligned perception of where we should want to be, if we're comparing ourselves to people. So once I learned that, I changed my perspective on all of it. I'm okay with it, man. I'm okay. Like I'll give you an example. I haven't taken a salary out of my agency in 9 years. I've had it for 9 years. I've not taken a salary. I've not taken a commission check. Nothing. I just keep reinvesting it. In people think I'm nuts or I'm lying about it. No, not really. I have a wife who has a really good job. She makes plenty of money for us to survive and for us to live off of and live well, raise my kids the right way. I'm building an asset. So if I can use her money to fund our lifestyle and I can just continue on reinvesting, I'll get my cash when it's time for me to go and exit from the agency. And it's going to be a lot more than what I would have had if I would have kept taking money out when I really didn't need to take money out, you know? And, I think there's more to it than that. I think, we live in a home that is well below our means. It's not like we don't live in a rat trap by any stretch, but I live in a very
Right.
modest house that was built in 1980. It's 2,000 square feet. It's 4 bedroom and 2 bathrooms. And I've got, my wife, 4 kids and a golden retriever living in there. Is it comfortable? It's cozy. I'm not going to tell you it's comfortable, but I also had to look at things and I don't really want to ever have to move again. So I look at it from the perspective of what house do I want to be in when I'm 65 years old and it's just the two of us here? It's the house
Yep.
I live in right now. So if I can get through the period of time where we're a little bit cramped for having something that's going to be easier to maintain in my older years and quite frankly, something that would also be very easy to rent if I ever decided I just wanted to rent it out and I wanted to move somewhere else, further south or to the islands or whatever, then I could do that. But I don't think everybody thinks that way. And it's not that I'm
Nope.
looking for anybody to pat me on the back, man. I don't need any affirmation from anybody else about the financial decisions that I've made because I'm going to do what's right for me and my family. But I think too many people feel like when you hit a certain level, you have to buy the house to match your level of success. You have to buy the car that matches your level of success. Dude, I'm 51 years old. I bought a new, I bought a brand new Ram 1500 limited diesel 3 years ago. That is the first brand new car I have bought since I was 21 years old and made a horrible mistake buying a new car. And the
Wow.
only reason that I bought it new was because they gave me incredible financing options, interest free to use their money. That's it. Otherwise, my MO is I buy gently used lease turn ins that have the extended warranty on them and I pay cash so the other fool can take the depreciation.
Yep.
And I talk about it all the time, and that has afforded me to drive some really nice vehicles that I would never have bought brand new because I
Mhm.
couldn't I maybe could have afforded them, but I wouldn't have wanted to because I'm
Right.
making a sacrifice to drive a car. You make sacrifices so your kids can play sports or your kids can have the things that they want. But as a parent, you don't go buy a car and sacrifice that stuff so you can drive a status symbol. Anyhow, I'm off my soapbox now. But I mean, talk a little bit about the farming thing though, man. I mean, I'm not a farmer. I owned a landscape company. I know how to plant. I mean, I'm licensed to do some of that stuff. I've had decent sized gardens in my yard over the years, but I don't think that you have to be Einstein to know that that's a lot of work to work the land and to have a farm and it never goes away. And if it doesn't get one day, it doesn't just magically happen and you start from scratch again the next day. It builds up and builds up and builds up. So what's that like? I mean, you're building an agency at the absolute worst time to launch an agency based on what, the industry would tell you.
Yeah.
And you're running a farm at the same time, man. You're nuts. Like what
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
how do you balance that?
It's pretty crazy, and my days are maxed out. And sometimes my wife can see that some days I come home and I'm just pooped. But I do want to live every day like it's my last, and so every day I'm gonna give it my all to my family and to my agency, to my team, and to our farm. So the way that it all started, David, was like I said, when I was 15 years old, I started farming, inspired through the FFA, and it was really a mistake, honestly, because I thought that in order to be an FFA, I thought you had to be a farmer. So I went to my parents and I said, "Hey, I'm in FFA now. I'm loving it. I done bought me a pair of Wranglers, man. I got me a pair of cowboy boots. I went down to the boot barn, bought me some cowboy boots, and I said, I'm all in. I said, I got to start growing some food. And so I said, can I use y'all's backyard to grow a garden? And they're like, sure. Like, where'd this come from? 'Cause I've always been a music guy. I played music since I was 7 years old in church. I've always been playing drums and piano, and I've ran track. Never been a farmer or anything close to farming. So they were kind of confused, like, what the heck is going on with Terren wanting to grow food all of a sudden? So I grew some peppers. I had some peppers, banana peppers, and I remember I had some melons that I grew, and I brought to our local FFA meeting, and I got to watch my friends, my ag teacher, my parents came, and I saw everyone eating food that I produced, and I fell in love. I said, for the rest of my life, I want to keep growing food and providing food for either my community, for my state, for local restaurants, food banks. I said, I want to provide food to the people. I want to take care of God's land and feed God's people. So that's when I became hooked. But today, so the agency started out as Moore Farms and Insurance in 2018. I was farming and doing insurance under the same entity, which I learned I had a lesson there was not a good idea. But knowing if you don't learn this stuff in high school or in college, so you have to kind of learn through experience. And so, um, after some meetings with my CPA, um, we did some arrangements where now the agency is MFI Agency, because it sounds like an insurance agency versus a farm now. And also, we have the farm as a nonprofit called AgriStart. We're helping young farmers get started in ag, just like I did. I didn't need a whole lot to start. It's a small vegetable farm, 15 acres, not a whole lot of land, old equipment, old planters, old cultivators. Anyone with the passion for it or desire could do it. So AgriStar is now helping other farmers financially and through education get their start in agriculture. So today, that's my main field day. I got from the food bank literally 30 minutes before our meeting started. I made two loads today from the farm to the food bank, delivering some turnip greens uh, this morning. So man, it's so cool to pull up to the food bank and you see the people that you see the beneficiaries of the food sitting outside waiting for the delivery. And there's some bringing my greens, and they have some canned goods, and they have some protein sources, and so we all come together, um, all for the better good, to feed those people who are truly in need and just cannot make ends meet. The food bank delivers food that every single day there's some kind of drop off for the foods. That's what fills my heart, man. I try to make money farming. It's hard to make money farming. So I said, I
It is,
want to
man.
keep doing this.
Especially,
I
I gotta
love it.
believe too, especially if you're a smaller farm. It's just I don't. It would be like a neighborhood grocery store trying to compete with a Walmart supercenter across the street, because
Agreed.
you see these massive, like in being in the grocery industry, I know who like some of these just gigantic suppliers of beef and produce are, because their names were on the boxes that would come in. And then you start digging in and seeing how big these operations are. It's like,
They're
how in the
huge.
how in the world would a small farmer ever be able to compete? And I mean, even when you look at like the TV show Yellowstone, I hate to say, use it as an example, but if you look at it, look how many generations that land was in the family. Like you don't build wealth in farming because you have one good season, man.
No,
You had to start out generations ago and be a good steward of the land and understand everything that you needed to do to be able to keep it sustainable, because you can't keep planting the same thing every single year. You got to rotate your crops, or today technology may be better with different soil amendments and things like that you can put in so that you could, but it's not a one and done, man. It's a process oriented thing, and it truly has to be a labor of love. And if you're listening to the podcast, you could close your eyes and rewind real quick and hear what I just said. That ain't any different than building a scratch agency or starting out trying to build your book from the ground up. It's 100% the same thing. You have to be passionate about what you're doing. You have to be patient and know it's not going to happen overnight. And you have to be willing to be dedicated to put the work in to go and do your thing, man. So kudos to you. And so how do you get financial support for the nonprofit at this point? Is that through donations? Do you get grants? All of the above? What's that look like? Because I'm sure there are people that are listening to this that by the time we're done are going to want to know how they can help you.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. So our main source is through donations. And so I've had some local businesses here that have heard what we're doing and they're following us and they're seeing us delivering the food, planting the crops, taking care of the ground. And so that's the easiest way I'd say is through donations. We have a website, it's agristartfarm.org. And so you can donate there. But through that money, we receive the donations, and that money is spent for us to grow the crops. And so to plant the crops, get the seed, get the fertilizer, any fungicide or insecticide that needs to be used. So we're growing the crops, and then we're either going to donate the crops to local food banks, or we sell the crops if it's like to a restaurant or like a for-profit organization. We'll sell it, or they'll give us a donation too. They'll say, "Hey, instead of buying the produce, we'll just give you a large donation and call it good that way." So we delivered some to a few restaurants yesterday who are going to donate to us down the road, and so that's the best way. But all that money goes straight into the nonprofit account to where we can pour out into our community and help other farmers get their start in ag. And so our goal is to find three farmers to invest in over 2025 to give them thousands of dollars to help them start their own farm, to help buy them a tractor, get some lease land, get a planter, get a cultivator. By the way, it's not all new equipment. It's going to be all, old stuff. My stuff's
Got to
all
start somewhere,
1960s.
man.
So you got to start somewhere. My stuff's 1960 stuff. So I use old equipment. So I believe for less than $5,000, you can start your own farming operation with a 15-acre lease, 20-acre lease. You can't buy land for that, but you can lease the land and help another landowner with their tax burden as well to put that land into ag so they get their exemption. And so for less than 5 grand, I know we can help three farmers actually start their own farming operation and they can start growing food for their community as well.
The other good thing about using old equipment is it teaches you how to keep old equipment running because
Absolutely.
that's a skill set you definitely have to have if you're doing anything that involves heavy equipment like that. That's your lifeblood, man. And they're the guys that do know and ladies who do know how to fix that stuff aren't necessarily right around the corner at all times.
Yeah.
Maybe by you they are, but by me they're not. Plant City's not that far away where all the strawberries are grown, but it would still be a little bit of a hike for somebody to come down to where we're at if we needed them right away. So talk about how what you've learned through building the farm has translated into you building the agency.
Man, I can say honestly, without the work ethic of what ag has taught me, I'm not sure we'd be where we are today. I'd say by a long shot, because agriculture has taught me it's a long process to get a little bit. And so in the insurance world, you're not making 10 calls to close a deal. You're making 50 to 100 calls to close a deal. And it shows you the same that I've learned in ag. It takes several hours to just plow a field. Before you even plant a crop, you got to plow the field. You have to do all the cultivation. You got to test the soil. There's so much planning involved with farming. The exact same thing for insurance. There's so much planning involved for creating your prospect list, finding out what your niche is going to be, getting all your technology stuff set up, even the phone system stuff, making a call tree and stuff. Man, it's very time consuming, but it takes months, it takes years to finally perfect, and it's never perfect, but it takes months and years to have a actually operation that's flourishing and operating the way that it should. So that in the insurance world, I've been very patient. I'm a very urgent person. I like the things to be fast, and I understand that it doesn't always work that way. And I'll say, for example, November and December are so hard for me because I like to go fast. I want to slam deals. I'm working harder in these 2 months at the end of the year because people are not as like excited to buy insurance or make decisions. And so I'm in a very stressful time in these 2 months. I'm just like, I want to go fast. I don't want to take off work. I want to keep going. I want to get things going and finish the year strong. And everyone else is like, let's kind of sit back and plan for the next year and take a break. And I want to keep going, but I also understand the long game, and that's what ag has taught me: is everything is the long game. It's not trying to get rich quick. It's about creating a system that keeps flourishing year after year after year.
So what's been the toughest part about launching your agency to this point? Because
The
you're
toughest,
probably, if I had to guess, man, if you've been in the agency for 3 years now, you're probably starting to see a little bit of the light at the end of the tunnel. You're probably about three-quarters of the way up the mountain. You still have a little way to go, but you've had enough time in it that you've gotten your teeth kicked in a few times and you've had some wins too. So I'm going to ask you both. You can answer whichever way you want, or you can answer both at the same time. But I'm interested is what's the hardest thing that you've had to deal with, and what's the biggest win that you've had so far?
the hardest thing that I've had to deal with, to be honest with you, is all the processes and systems to create. We did build our first intranet this year that has all my training in it. It has all basically has Terren's brain on our intranet. And so that took so much time. Thankfully, I did have a lot of help from. I used Josh Nadler with All Assurance. He was super helpful with building that for us. And so that's been the biggest game changer, but it's also took a lot of time to build that. And that's not the way my brain's not worked that way. My brain works is like just go fast, close the deals, let's make money, let's get going. And so to slow down, to go fast has been the hardest thing for me. So I'm doing the same thing right now. We're building out our niche even deeper in the agricultural world. And I'm trying to figure out what exactly do I want to go after? What size account do I want to go after? What's it going to take for me to build the processes and systems for this? What kind of service is it going to be? All that stuff is it's just it's takes a lot of brain power. And so that's been the toughest thing, honestly, as far as like closing and stuff or prospecting. I love that. I love doing that kind of stuff. So that's what brings me like joy and happiness is calling and being out in the community, shaking hands, kissing babies. I love to do that. It's all the behind the scenes stuff. That's what seems to like slow me down mentally, and where I have to step back and go slow to go fast. That's what I'm learning. You got to go slow to go fast, and that's been the hardest thing. The biggest win I will say is actually a farm that I wrote this year. This farmer I talked to him the year before, and they had an agent. They had like an agent that wasn't a farmer, didn't understand farm, and I looked at their policy. I saw a lot of gaps in their coverage, and I said, "Hey, y'all," I said, honestly, I'm gonna put this out to the market for you guys. I'm gonna be higher, and I'm just letting you know up front. There's a lot of gaps on your policy. Let them know everything, all the gaps were. And they said, "Well, right now we're trying to save money. We're not really concerned about yada yada yada." And I said, "Okay, fine, that's fine." And so I followed up again and just didn't hear back. The deal seemed to go dead with me. So I put it in my win back automation, and I hit him again the next year. And I said, "Hey, are y'all so happy?" And I knew they weren't gonna be happy because I knew what was going on in their policy. I said, "Hey, are y'all so happy where y'all are at?" They said, "Honestly, no. Our billing's messed up. Our policies are all over the place. We have stuff all over. Like we don't know what's covered. Our agent doesn't know what they're talking about." And they said, "We've actually heard about you from so and so. We see you're a farmer. We've seen your stuff on the internet about your nonprofit and everything. And so we'd like to work with you." So I went to their house, went to their farm, sat down with them, went through all their policies, explained to them everything that was going on, and closed that deal. And that's the biggest farm that I have on the books, and it's here locally. They've been amazing clients. I love coming to their farming operation and talking to them, and we've got a really good relationship built. So that's been the biggest win. It's not my biggest policy on the books ever. I've got some bigger contractors that are larger than that farm, but I'll say the process of going from someone saying no to not interested to the yes after the experience working with a generalist agency that doesn't understand agriculture to now seeing the value of working with a person that has a niche in that field. That's been the biggest win that I've had this year.
So I know you were part of were you it was an FFA you were in?
Yes.
Okay, I was
Yes,
gonna
sir.
say I don't. There's not another form. I mean, I'm sure there are other formal organizations, but they're all Future Farmers of America that are in schools, as
Yeah.
far as I know. So that was, you said 15. That's late junior high, early high school, depending on how your state, city, whatever breaks up junior high and high school. Is that how you grew up? Like, did you grow up kind of in agricultural? Like, are you from that area of Texas originally, or is this just something that you kind of discovered and took
Yeah,
to?
we didn't grow up on a farm or anything. I will say we were raised in the country. I've always been in the country. But as far as like my household, my family members doing farming for a side hobby or for a living, no. I'm sure back in the day, a long time ago, everyone was a farmer. So I can't say like a
Yeah,
true
no
first
kidding.
generation because someone down the road farmed. But in our household, my mom's a nurse, my dad's a truck driver, and dad he's grown a garden before. He's actually done peas before, and so we had a tractor. We have some land where he keeps it straight. It keeps it keeps the grass cut and everything. But as far as making money, farming or anything, I consider it first generation. But I will say, without my family, it'd been really hard to do because my family gave me my first lease opportunity. My grandma, who had actually just passed away earlier on Thanksgiving, actually passed away, but she gave me my first lease grant opportunity, and she said the agreement is if you'll bring me some produce, you can farm this land for as long as you want. It was two
Mm.
acres. It was a good start, and from there, I made enough money to eventually purchase my own equipment and get my own planter. But for years, David, I was borrowing my dad's tractor. Had a guy from church. His name's Jerry Francis. I went to him and I said, "Hey, I want to start farming." I said, can I borrow your planter and borrow your cultivator? Because I don't have the money right now to do that." He said, "Oh yeah, I'll bring it over." So for years, I was using people's equipment in my grandma's lease land, so I didn't have any big overhead starting out, which gave me a really good head start. So I really put cash in the bank, so I could actually buy my own equipment and everything along the way. But no, I didn't come from a farming family where everyone works outside of the farm, and I just had this burning desire to get into the farming world through FFA. That's what sparked my interest.
That's a pretty cool story, man, because it's kind of what FFA is supposed to do. I mean,
Exactly,
right? Like it's supposed to
exactly,
actually bring people like you're gonna always have that subset of people out there who grew up on a farm and always knew that that's where they were going to be. We're
right,
going to end up on the farm because that's what we were born to do, and our family's done it for 6 generations now. But to know that it actually works, that you can get people interested that weren't necessarily in agriculture and bring them into that industry slash community, I think that's pretty cool, man, for sure. So you're looking at niches, and agriculture's massive, so you can get into a million different things there. But even then, you've got to know your stuff, man. Like I feel like with crop insurance specifically, that's something where there are agencies who do nothing but that. And they do
yes,
very, very well with, and I've got a guy that I know and have a relationship with that's local to me that does nothing but crop insurance, which quite honestly makes him my new best friend because then I can go and work with him on workers' comp and some of the other things that these operations need. But there's more than that. You've got the people who manufacture the fertilizers and things. You have the people who actually distribute the produce and the meat and all of that. You've got, I mean, you could probably make a case for, privately owned grocery stores and markets and things could be tied into that. You've got people that go out as consultants and use drones to fly over the fields and come back. I mean, you could probably
yeah.
come up with a million different things. How are you determining what it is you really want to zone in on and focus on?
So first and foremost, I've been planning on this for like 3 years basically, and I'm really close to getting it figured out, David, but it's not completely figured out yet. And of course, I'm still leaning on you. We have conversations about this between me and you.
Well,
and
I'm
through
getting my
your
update in real time right now, man.
yeah. So honestly, the biggest thing in the ag world is carrier access because a lot of your mainstream carriers, they want the most perfect farm with clean loss runs and I mean no old wood panels. I mean, they want the farm to be
Yeah,
like a
you
brand
actually
new.
question whether or not these underwriters have ever been on a working farm before, right?
Agreed.
Because you and I
Agreed.
both know that if you drive up on a farm, you're going to probably have some questions about a couple of the barns that you see when you get in there. And I mean, I haven't written a ton of farming stuff. My agricultural stuff has been related to egg laying facilities, big chicken houses, and pulling up and seeing layer house after layer house that's holding 5 or 6 million chickens in them. And it's the same thing. You can tell which ones have burnt down because they're built to the new standard, and you can see the
Yep.
ones that are going to burn down at some point because it's not a matter of if, but when, because it's like literally the most flammable flame construction you can possibly find that they build these things with. So I can imagine that's going to be an issue. And then the other thing, too, man, let's call it what it is. People in that grow up on farms have a way of fixing things that the rest of us don't necessarily know how to fix, right?
Agreed.
I
Yep.
learned a little bit of that. Like I can go, I'm at a point in my life where I can honestly say that if the belt breaks on an Exmark 52-inch deck mower, I know how to repair it with a cigarette lighter and get it put back on long enough to get me through the job to go get a new belt for it.
Yeah.
But when you pull up in some of these places, it's not about, oh, let's make sure we fix it right. It's more about let's fix it now because time is money. And what can we do to patch this thing up and keep it going? And then a lot of the times it never gets revisited, and that's what you see. So I can imagine that's a massive challenge for underwriting to get their arms around some of that.
Yep. That's honestly been the biggest thing. 'Cause I've had some really cool farm opportunities. I've had some cool. I'll say that some of the most recent ones. I've had some agritourism opportunities that's come across my desk, and I know would be really large cases. And I've had issues placing them. They want to work with us. They've seen our stuff. They followed me on social media, and they're like, we know you're the farm guy, and it's almost embarrassing when you get a nice lead come across your desk, and you're like, I'm honestly getting hit in the head trying to place this risk, and so that's been my biggest thing because as far as the relationships go and finding the business, that's been like the most entertaining thing for me because I love farm. Like I'll show up to a farmer's place and we'll chit chat. Then their next door neighbor shows up because I was at a farm recently, one of my clients, and they're going to be spraying that day, and so we had a meeting early that morning because if you're a farmer, of course, you spray early in the morning to kind of lower the wind risk for chemical drift, and so and then his grandpa pulls up. He's like, "Hey, I've heard all about you. I brought my deck pages with me. Here they are. I want you to look at them and look at my stuff." So we're doing my client's review, and then his grandpa said with his deck pages in hand, ready to do business with that. So like that part I love. Like I can do all that. It's just once I get those deck pages and I go to the markets, I'm like, hey, here's this account I'm looking at, and he might have some claims on there and stuff. And then I'm just getting hit in the head with a lot of the mainstream carriers. And if they do provide options, they're like double what they're already paying. So that's been the biggest thing as a carrier. So I love everything else, but it's just the carrier access and being competitive in the ag market. That's the biggest thing because ag risk is just different than any other line of business that we have. It's totally different.
Yeah, and it's interesting you said that, man, because I actually had a similar experience. In a going back a while now, I don't have them now because it was at a prior agency, but I wrote a pretty good chunk of the feed mills that are down in Okeechobee, Florida. And it's a weird situation. A lot of people don't realize how rural Florida really is. I mean, there's when you get outside of like Tampa, Miami, Orlando, like the big cities everybody knows about,
Hmm.
you get into that fat part of the peninsula of Florida. That's a lot of cattle land and agricultural land, and then you've got Lake Okeechobee that's in the middle there. And I just don't think the average person realizes how much of an agricultural economy Florida has. I mean, obviously we know about oranges and grape, like the citrus stuff, but it's way more than that. It's really kind of fascinating when you get on some of these back roads and realize how desolate a lot of these areas really are. But I had gone down because I had found a program for feed mills that was from an association, but it was a captive insurance company that specialized in nothing but feed mills. And
Hmm.
if they wanted it, they were not going to be beat. Not even
Wow.
close. They would crush the pricing. And so I reached out to the guy, had never met him before. I think I want to say at this point, I don't even I think they were based out of Iowa. And I shot him a message and said, "Hey man, I'd really like to learn more about your product. I don't know if you ever get to Florida, but I'd love for you to put me down for a visit the next time you come. And if you give me enough of a heads up, I'll book some appointments if you'd like to run them with me, and we'll go out, and that way I can learn about your appetite actually looking at stuff instead of talking about it in a conference room." It must have been exactly what that dude wanted to hear, because like within 2 weeks he was in my office. Like he came down, he wanted to talk. And so moral of the story, I had booked like one or two appointments, and we went to the first appointment that morning, and we got up. God, we were up so early. We were keeping farmers hours that day for sure, because I want to say I was up at like 4:30 just to get up to drive down there, because it's an hour and a half, 2 hours from where I live. And so I went and grabbed him at his hotel, and we drove down there, and we're sitting in the first feed mill, and the owner's talking with the guy from the insurance company, and my ADHD's kicking in, and I'm hearing like 15 things going on. And one of them is the receptionist out in the lobby saying, "Oh yeah, yeah, they're here. Yeah, I'll ask them. I don't know why it would be a problem. They're here. Okay, yeah, I'll let you know." And so we wrap up the meeting, and we go to walk out, and the lady said, "Hey, the other feed mill, 2 doors down, found out that you were here, and they would like to talk to you about what's going on with their insurance right now. Would you have time to go and talk to them?" And I said, "Sure, not a big deal." I get in the car to drive down there, because we had about 40 minutes between meetings. And when I get in my car, my phone rings, and it's my business development person back at the agency who said, "Hey, I got a call from two more feed mills in Okeechobee that heard you're in town and would love for you to come by." So the more, like, what happened was, we went, like, the way that the feed mills are set up down there too is the overwhelming majority of them are on one street. More, I shouldn't say street, more like a road, because they're not
Right.
like literally right on top of each other. But if it's 2 miles long, the feed mills were all in that 2 mile strip. And I was just literally going door to door to door, because once the first one heard, all of them wanted to talk. And it was insane. And guess
Wow.
what, man? We got the first one, the second one, the third one, the fourth one, the fifth one. We ended up writing all of them. And it was the point of the story is what you just said about the old man coming in and he already had his deck pages ready. That's exactly what I experienced. It's like these people, they're probably loyal to the people who work with them, but if they find out somebody has a better mousetrap and they don't have it,
Yeah.
they want that mousetrap, because if that other person's getting a competitive advantage on margin that could control pricing and everything else, it's going to affect them too. I don't think the average one of us outside of the industry really understands how volatile the margins are and how quickly things can go south. Because I mean, I don't know about it from the growing standpoint. I just know how hard it is to run a perishable department in a grocery store once all of that part's done. I
Right.
can't even imagine how much harder it is when you're growing it from seed up. And I've gotten some experiences. I had a pretty cool opportunity 6 or 7 years ago now to go down to Nicaragua with a couple of my buddies, and we visited the Perdomo cigar factory in the fields down there. We were down there for 4 or 5 days and stayed at the Perdomo facility. But it was really, really interesting, even watching that process, to see like how they take care of just the seeds, which are almost microscopic. They're so
Yeah.
small that you get so much from one plant. But you have to have that much that you start with, because what you end up is getting as yield is never, anywhere close to what you start with. And just managing the profit inside of all of that is just, you really have to have your stuff dialed in. And I just, I don't know what farming's like relative to the insurance industry, other than I know the insurance industry is very, very slow to change and very, very slow to adopt new things. Now, the era that you and I are in right now is completely different than what it has been historically, because there are so many insurtechs that are out there looking for technology ways to solve problems, that maybe it's starting to move a little bit quicker. But I got to believe farming, even though it's a time honored tradition, occupation, whatever you want to call it, I have a feeling it's benefiting a little bit from the changes in technology and the ability to get data. Like it used to be, you just go, your uncle would go out and lick their thumb and hold it up and tell you which way the rain was coming. I got to believe you have like really, really cool reporting and things that help you, make the best decisions. And that's one of the things that I think, from my perspective, if I'm in your shoes, I think you lean into that, man. I don't, correct me if I'm wrong. You're not going to hurt my feelings any if I don't know what I'm talking about on my podcast. But as farms progress, as they start operating, I don't want this to sound the wrong way, because it's not that they haven't operated as businesses, but they haven't really operated um, like a business that has common practices, formal reporting, all of that stuff. It just hasn't. It hasn't been something people thought about or thought was necessary. But when you start looking at ways to incorporate drones to fly over fields to see if there's issues with irrigation or infestation or nutrition or any of that, that tells me people are saying, okay, let's figure out how to use technology to our advantage. If I'm in your shoes, man, that's what I'm going to lean into when I deal with these people, because if they're learning to use tools that are newer to that segment of our economy to run their business better, you can provide them with those same tools around their insurance and risk management program that they're likely not getting from somebody who's just there to sell them insurance. So, from
Right.
my perspective, your value proposition is not selling them the insurance policy, it's showing them how to run their business more profitably. And that doesn't necessarily have to equate to, um, you know, just the agriculture piece. It can be, well, it looks like you're using seasonal labor and your frequency rates on your workers' comp in the months of June, July, and August are 3 times higher than what, and being able to give them that level of reporting. Because I feel like when you're in such a margin intense industry, you got to squeeze every single penny that you can. The problem is most people think that squeezing every penny means getting the price of the premium down as low as you can. The problem with that is you're only able to negotiate premium so low. The underwriter has filed rates. They may want to sell it to you for 50,000, but they can't go below 100, because that's what they're supposed to go for that class of business on something that size. And so if you can't get the premium any lower, you have to highlight those other areas of the operation from a risk management perspective that they need to focus on. Because at the end of the day, it's all the same bucket of money, man. Your goal is to
Right.
keep as little leave in that bucket as you can. And it may be that you've maximized your ability to save money on the actual insurance payout, but you can come over here and look at all these 5 other things that have to do with insurance and risk management and running a farm, where money's leaking from their financials, but they've never had that conversation before.
Hmm. Hmm. So really the value prop is more of helping manage their like you say, all overall cost of risk, but there's ways to also look at that, because you're right. A lot of those drones are now monitoring even nitrogen levels. And they can measure all the like macronutrients in N, P, and K. And so along with that, and then also the fuel cost with having a drone versus using a self-propelled sprayer or having to go through harder spots in the fields that you can't always get
When you
larger
say
equipment
NPK,
through.
are you talking about nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium?
Yes,
Come
yes,
on,
sir.
man. Come on, man. You don't just wear suits and ties. I know what the three
But
numbers on a bag of fertilizer mean.
heck yeah. But I guess yeah, you're right. That would be a good idea for our agency is have the value prop, and we can talk more about that more in depth of creating a process for that for 2025. But
Yeah, because
I
my for
there
my thing is, man, if what I would envision for you would be to figure out a way that you and we definitely need to think through this. This is 100% doable, but I don't know enough about the mechanics of running the farm. You and I are going to have to do this together, but I would have like a single page like dashboard that becomes the top page of whatever audit report, whatever it is that I'm going to do. But think about those things that have to do with insurance and risk management, and certainly shrink in terms of, lost crops and getting a lower than average yield. That's a risk that needs to be managed. Infestation and things are a risk that need to be managed. You could go in and almost take like a compliance check standpoint. And if your conversations are around, talk to me a little bit about how you're handling this. Talk to me about what you have in place for this. Do you have an example of something? And you go in and it's more around the operations, but you're specifically asking the questions that are going to drive heartburn in the underwriters. You can actually come up with a scoring system and show them where they score. And it doesn't need to be like a negative thing or something that would offend somebody. But when you put numbers on things and people look and see, well, wait a minute, if average is 50 and I'm at a 30, I need to do better. That bothers me. Like, what can I do to make this better? And then you can correlate that and say, well, actually, if you improved over here by this much, you're going to probably see a decrease in your premium over here by this much, because they're going to have a better comfort level that they're not going to have to pay claims for this, particular exposure. And then you take that a step further. Once you get that dialed in, when you start going out and calling on new businesses and we figure out what it is that we're measuring, we can have metrics that you put into your marketing materials that show this is what the national average is, for whatever this metric is. This is what the average farm scored when they became a client of MFI. And here's the average score of one of our clients after they've been our client for three years plus. And you can show them that they weren't where they needed to be in their benchmark according to the national, and that the national should always end up being lower than what the benchmark is for your own book of business, because you want to show them that the best accounts are in your book. And then when you show them what that looks like after 3 to 5 years versus what it looked like when they came in, you're gonna have people tripping over each other to come in, because now you're gonna have the ability to tie that to dollars, show how much money you've saved, and you can confidently create marketing pieces and talk tracks around that aren't going to be refuted by somebody. But it all goes back to, what's my process? And I think Paradiso does a good job with this with his Amazon stuff and his last mile delivery stuff. It's easy to say that I do parcel delivery. And Chris would, if you know Chris, I know you do, obviously, but when you know Chris, that's like a big program that's in his agency. But what you don't know are all the little nuances that he's put into that program, like going in and talking to a footwear provider that provides a certain type of boots that the delivery drivers wear that they can get at a pre-negotiated price, but also that boot company takes some risk sharing for somebody who rolls their ankle while wearing their boots. And you're not going to be on the hook for the whole thing inside the deductible layer. And I want to put a very serious disclaimer. I don't know that that's exactly how Chris has it set up. So
right, right.
forgive me, Paradiso, if I botched it a little bit, but I think he would agree when he decided he was going all in on those things. It's not just about having the metrics, the measurements, the audit process. You have to have the solution. in place. And I think Chris has done a very good job of providing value added solution. And I would suspect data reporting and other things to these people. And they won't leave him as a result, because you're not going to get that anywhere else.
Right.
That's where we need to get you. We need to get you into that place inside of agriculture so that you can walk in. You're the man. You're the man. Everybody knows who Terren is. Terren with MFI is here. Hope we do okay on our scoring today, because I really want to work with him. That's it.
Yeah.
That's where you want to get. And I think you can do it, man. The problem is we got to get you narrowed down, because it's so wide. It's so vast.
Very
You could go
wide.
a million different directions, but when we get you niched down, I think it's going to be really, really cool. So let me ask you one thing as we're wrapping up.
Yes, sir.
When it comes to insurance and risk management, what's one piece of advice that you would give to the average farmer who's always done it the way that it's been done?
If I could pick one piece of advice to give to the average farmer who's always done it the way it's always been done, I would say, honestly, here in Texas, at least, that's where most of my book is, and here in Texas, is I would really review what your labor process looks like, because the H-2A program is a up and coming thing. Not really up and coming, but more people are getting involved with H-2A programs, especially if you're involved in the vegetable business where you're hand picking crops. Uh, People in America don't want to do that, and so honestly, the work comp is super important for the H-2A program, because in order to even qualify for that, you have to have work comp on your operation. In Texas, it's a right to work state. And so, a lot of farmers will say, oh, I don't need that work comp. I don't need to look at that. And, if you don't have H-2A workers, you really don't have to in Texas. But if you have H-2A, you have to. And so, a lot of farmers are missing the mitch part when it comes to workers' comp by just not being educated about that. But also, there's not enough agents that are really talking about it in the ag world. That's why I'm here to educate farmers about the importance of that. I mean, when it comes to even like grain bin safety, I've seen people pass away working in these grain bins. If you're calling over a grain bin and check levels on the crop, and someone falls in, it's like a mud pit. Like, you just get sucked down, and you can't breathe. Your chest is getting compressed, and if you don't
That's the
have any
quicksand
work
that
comp,
scared me to death when I was a kid, man. When I was 10 years old, I didn't figure I'd make it to 15. I thought the quicksand was going to get me, because you saw it on all the cartoons and everything. I was worried I'd be walking down the road one day, step into a thing of sand, and next thing you know, I was gobbled up into the earth and never to be seen again. But that's actually a really, really good point, because if they're not versed in the comp, there's so many things inside of that can be done to save them money, both on premium and out of pocket. That's probably pretty wide open space for you to get in and have conversations on.
I agree. I
I'll tell you
agree.
what, man. I said I was gonna end with that. I'm gonna say one more thing, and this just cracks me up. You'll get a kick out of this, but it's the difference between people who live in the city and have never lived in the country, never grew up on a farm, and the people who grew up in that kind of an environment. And I'll never forget this. It's the probably the single worst. I don't know, man. I've had a couple bad ones now. I would still say it's top 3 worst workers' comp claims I've ever been involved in. And it was at a feed mill. And I got a call. This is 16, 17 years ago now. I got a call from my underwriter freaking out, saying, "What's going on at XYZ feed company? I just got notification that they had to have one of their people life flighted off the property because they had a severe injury, and I need to know, like, how bad is it really?" And I said, "Well, I'm just now hearing about this. I haven't heard from them. I had no idea they had a claim. Are you sure it's my client?" And she said, "It's absolutely your client. Please see if you can get a hold of them and let me know what's going on." Like, you would think that the world was ending the way this underwriter was talking. So I called and I got the lady that was my contact there. I don't want to say her title was office manager, but she ran the place. Like most office managers, she ran the whole freaking thing. The old man that was responsible for everything just turned it over to her. And I said, "Hey, just how things going?" "Oh, not too bad. We're doing all right down here." And I was like, "Well," I said, I got a just got a kind of a weird phone call, and I wanted to follow up on it." And I said, "Have you had a workers' comp claim this morning?" Oh gosh, yeah, we did. I don't remember the guy's name. Oh, Billy, he got his legs chewed up a little bit, but we got him in the hospital. And I'm like, okay, well, the underwriter called me and was really concerned because she seemed like it was really bad. Well, yeah, it got him, the drag chain got him pretty good. So here's the short version of the story, even though it's too late. This guy was receiving a shipment of whatever ingredients for the feed that they were making from a rail car, and he had taken the grate off the top because number one, you don't take the grate off the top, but he took the grate off the top because they would make the argument that it clogs up too easily or something like that. So he ended up taking it off to clean it out, I think is what it was. And that's exactly what it was. The rail car had moved away. He took the grate off to clean it out. He wasn't paying attention. He reached down to answer his cell phone, forgot that he had taken the grate off, and he fell into the hole where the drag chain was that was operating the conveyor to take the stuff up into the elevator. And both of his legs got caught up in that drag chain. And I'm telling you, man, he lost both of his legs from that deal. Now, I got a call from a freaked out underwriter, which is the call I probably would have made if I knew somebody had both their legs ripped off by a drag chain. Nope, not the country folk in the feed mill. No, he got a little hacked up by the drag chain. Rub some dirt on it and get back in the game. Whole
That's
different
why I love.
language.
That's why I love the agricultural way of life, man. Nothing's a big deal. You just got to keep rolling.
No. Well, you know what? You need to employ that mindset as much as you can into the insurance industry. Maintain your intensity and desire to succeed, but you can't let it consume you. You have to let a lot of it roll off your back too. And if you can continue to do that, you're gonna be just fine.
Yes, sir. I agree.
So
I
listen,
just love to go, man. I love to go.
So listen, everybody, we're going to wrap up now. I'm going to tell you, you heard it here. Terren runs a nonprofit farm. He didn't know I was going to put this out there, so don't blame him. If you want to throw tomatoes, throw them at me. But if you have an interest in learning more, if you have an interest in donating, check out the show notes. We'll have a link to his website in the show notes so that you can go and visit that site and see all the cool things he's doing. And if you feel so moved, you can contribute, and I'm sure that would be very much appreciated. So thanks for spending time shooting the breeze with me today, man. I appreciate catching up with you, and we'll catch you guys next time. See ya.
Thank you so much, David.